There are 23,000 separate burial sites for the nearly 1.7 million British and Commonwealth soldiers buried around the world. The largest of these anywhere in the world is Tyne Cot Cemetery here on the Passchendaele Battlefield. That name, Tyne Cot, is said to have come from the Northumberland Fusiliers, who noticed a resemblance between the German concrete pillboxes here and the typical Tyneside workers' cottages, Tyne Cots. This area contained several German bunkers which were captured by the 3rd Australian Division during the battle for Passchendaele. One of those bunkers was unusually large, and it was used as an advanced dressing station after its capture. From October the 6th of 1917 until the end of March 1918, over 300 burials were made on either side of the bunker by the 50th and 33rd Divisions and by a few Canadian units. The cemetery and the surrounding area fell back into German hands between April and September of 1918 before it was finally recaptured by the Belgian army. There are now nearly 12,000 Commonwealth servicemen from the First World War buried or commemorated in Tyne Cot Cemetery. Over 8,000 of those burials remain unidentified. But there are also special memorials to more than 80 casualties who are believed to be among those. Other special memorials commemorate 20 casualties whose graves were destroyed by shell fire. And there are also 4 German burials in this cemetery, 3 of them unknown.
Christopher Hartley, age 31.
As you walk up to the Tyne Cot Cemetery, you hear the names being read. The names and the ages of the men who fell here. It's quite something, and it's really kind of the first thing you notice before you even arrive at the visitor center.
G.S. Waterman, age unknown. Lewis Fleming Jenkin, age 22. Reginald Ryman, age 20.
So as I often do with my visits to these cemeteries on these battlefields, I want to take the time to share some stories here. Specifically, we are going to be sharing the stories of 6 recipients of the Victoria Cross who are either buried here in a known grave or who are commemorated on the tablets for the missing. I've also brought along photos of some of the soldiers who are buried here and flags that I want to place just as a special way to honor them today. Behind me, and going all the way around this part of the cemetery, is a memorial wall to the nearly 35,000 British and Anzac soldiers whose bodies were never identified, who were killed in action or declared missing after August of 1917. When you add those to the names of the missing on the Menin Gate Memorial, you're up to around 90,000 British and Commonwealth soldiers whose bodies were never properly identified, who either lie in an unknown grave in one of these cemeteries or were never found and are still out on the battlefield somewhere. Ernest Seaman originally served as a baker in the British Army Service Corps before being allowed to join the front lines with the 2nd Battalion Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers near the end of the war. His Victoria Cross citation reads, quote, "On 29 September 1918, at Terhand, Belgium, when the right flank of his company was held up by machine guns by the enemy, Lance Corporal Seaman went forward under heavy fire with his Lewis gun and engaged the position single-handed, capturing 2 machine guns and 12 prisoners and killing 1 officer and 2 men. Later on in the day, he again rushed another machine gun post, capturing the gun under very heavy fire. He was killed immediately afterwards, but it was due to his gallant conduct that his company was able to push forward to its objective. His body was never identified, and so he's remembered today on this tablet of the missing." Philip Eric Bent was a lieutenant colonel in the 9th Battalion, Leicestershire Regiment. He was born in Nova Scotia, Canada, and he served as the 26-year-old lieutenant colonel of the 9th Battalion. During actions on the 1st of October 1917, east of Polygon Wood, Lieutenant Colonel Bent was in command of a part of the 9th Battalion on his right. When they were forced back due to the intensity of German artillery fire, he personally collected a platoon that was in reserve at the time and led them forward in a counterattack after issuing orders to the other officers to support a defense of the rest of the line. He was killed while leading that charge, which resulted in securing a portion of the line which was essential for subsequent operations. For his most conspicuous bravery, he was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross on January 11th, 1918. Like so many here, his body was never identified, and so he's on the tablet behind me in honor of all of the men who are forever unidentified from the Leicestershire Regiment. William Clamp was born in Motherwell, Scotland, and he served as a corporal in the 6th Battalion Yorkshire Regiment of the British Army. In actions at Polkapelle on October 9th, 1917, Corporal Clamp rushed a German machine gun and captured 20 prisoners. He brought them back to the rear and then returned again to the front. He continued forward, leading others to another enemy position when he was killed by a sniper. For gallantry in face of the enemy, he was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, which was presented to his parents by His Majesty King George V at Buckingham Palace on March 2nd, 1918. Sergeant Lewis McGee was born in Ross in Tasmania, and he was a member of the 40th Battalion of the Australian Imperial Forces. On October 12, 1917, his company was stopped by machine gun fire from a concrete pillbox. On his own, he single-handedly rushed the position armed only with a revolver, shot several of the crew, and captured the rest. He then reorganized the remnants of his platoon and enabled the advance to proceed on to success. He was killed in action later on in the fight, and for his bravery, he was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross in November of 1917. Now you notice that unlike the other sections of the cemetery, these graves are not neatly spaced in a row. They're often bunched together. There are several names on some of these markers. This one here says 8 unknown soldiers of the Great War plus 4 Australian soldiers. And what that tells us is that this is the original section of this cemetery. These are the initial graves who were placed here when this bunker, which is under this marker here, was being used as a forward hospital, basically a dressing station, a place to stabilize men as best you could before you got them back to a better aid station. And then the other graves were eventually brought here from other places. Yeah, here it says this was the Tyne Cot blockhouse captured by the 3rd Australian Division, 4th October 1917. That was on the final push to Passchendaele. You know, walking through this cemetery is just such a great reminder of the international makeup of these British and Commonwealth forces. We often just lump them all in as the British or the British Empire. But I just walked down a single row of graves here at Tyne Cot, and I saw South Africa and Canada and Australia and New Zealand and Ireland, and then all manner of different counties in England, but then also Scotland. And of course there were Indian troops that fought here as well, and there were troops from various nations in Africa fighting particularly with the French. It really, truly was a world war here on the Ypres salient. And here we have the only named German soldier in this cemetery killed on 4th October 1917, plus an unknown burial as well. And then there are others. So right here we see one of the examples of one of the German concrete emplacements that are still in existence here at the Tyne Cot cemetery site. And they're built pretty darn solid. I mean, they've got some damage, but these are 100 years old. And I mean, they are solid inside of there. It's really quite impressive that even with all of the action that happened here, these things are as intact as they are. This is one grave in particular that I was looking for in here, and it's because of one of the cool things about British and Commonwealth war graves is that the families get to choose what they want to have written on the bottom. They also have these personalized icons on each one of them that either there's a cross or they also almost always have their regimental crest on there. But this particular one, this is Second Lieutenant Arthur Conway Young of the Royal Irish Fusiliers, and he was born in Japan, but he was a British soldier, and his family chose to have written on his grave, "Sacrificed to the fallacy that war can end war." Powerful stuff. James Peter Robertson was born in Nova Scotia, and he served as a private in the 27th Battalion of the Manitoba Regiment of the Canadian Infantry. On the 6th of November 1917, during the assault on Passchendaele, Private Robertson's platoon was held up by uncut wire and an enemy machine gun which was causing severe casualties. On his own, he rushed the machine gun, and after a desperate struggle with the crew, he killed 4 and then turned the gun on the remainder who were running toward their own lines. He inflicted more casualties among the enemy, and then he led his platoon to the final objective while carrying the captured machine gun. Once at the objective, he once again got the machine gun into action, firing on the retreating enemy and suppressing the fire of enemy snipers. Later on, during the battle, when two of his comrades were badly wounded in front of his trench, Robertson went out and carried one of them to safety under severe fire. He was killed just as he returned with the second man. For his most conspicuous bravery, he was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross on January 11th, 1918.